Thanks for stopping by and checking out my videos. And if you want to learn more about my book, Love Like Snow in Florida on a Hot Summer's Day, go down to the description. I have the links to both my website and Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, where you can read it for free. Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And we are here with our latest R. Kelly update. And you guys know that there was a status hearing that took place today. And so you may have already heard some of the things that came out of the hearing. For those of you who didn't, let's get ready to roll with this information. But before we get started, I want to follow up on the Nicole Blank Becker situation. So you guys know I shared with you yesterday that Nicole had filed a letter with the judge asking to withdraw from the case. Judge Donnelly, had told her to follow up by Monday evening if she was sure that that is what she wanted to do. And so Nicole filed another letter yesterday evening. And once again, this letter was sealed. And so Jason Mesner with the Chicago Tribune had revealed what was in those sealed letters. And basically he stated that Nicole wanted to withdraw from the case. He reached out to Nicole. She declined to comment, but basically told him that he would have more information following today's hearing. And so Jason Mesner is reporting that the motions that she filed last week definitely were to withdraw from the case, but the reason behind it was that it was a brief medical scare and that she was concerned that she wouldn't be cleared to travel to Brooklyn for the beginning of jury selection. She was concerned that she wouldn't be able to continue to participate on the trial, but I guess after conferring with her physician, she has been cleared to travel to Brooklyn for the beginning of jury selection. So Nicole is still on the case. However, she did file a motion asking to withdraw from the case, but things have turned around and she will now be continuing on the case. And of course, he didn't say what the medical scare was or what the medical condition is that she is dealing with. So just want to let you guys know that Nicole has withdrawn her motion to leave the case and she will be continuing on. And then another thing I want to share with you guys, Julius Darrington, who was R. Kelly's or is R. Kelly's A&R person, and they also have developed a close friendship. Well, he was in New York or is in New York. I think he leaves tomorrow to head back to California. But he was there to support R. Kelly, and I think that that is so important. And I'm sure if he looked in the audience and saw Julius there, that it made him feel 100% better, because I can remember when my kid's dad was on trial and he and I hadn't been together in probably 4 or 5 years before he went through his legal situation, and I was the only person that showed up to his trial. Every now and then his mom was able to come over, but for the most part, none of his little hoochie mamas he was running around with, none of his friends, that was supposed to be ride or die, none of them were in the courtroom. I was the only person sitting in the courtroom supporting him. And even to this day, 30 years later, he still talks about how much it meant to him to have even if it was just 1 or 2 people, to have that support. So greatly appreciative of Julius Darrington taking time out of his life to just go and be that support system, and just to let R. Kelly know that, people are showing up for him, and not just the supporters and the fans, but people that are close to him, that believe in him, that are praying for him, are willing, to take time out of their life to come and be there for him. And then it's equally important when you consider Julius is in the music entertainment industry and how this could negatively impact him, but he has a strong faith in God, and he's not going to be deterred, and God has rewarded him because he still has clients, still have people that are signing on and wanting to work with him. So I just want to share that that aside from the supporters and the fans that go into the going to the courtroom, taking time out of their lives, that there is at least one person that we know of that's from the entertainment industry that is still standing by his side. So let's go ahead and get into this pretrial hearing. And so Judge Donnelly has not filed her official response, which is the written response to the motion in limine from the prosecution, but she did make some rulings during the hearing, and it was kind of hard to come by this information on exactly, Julius shared some things that came out of the trial, but he didn't want to be quoted, because he's not into, the whole legalities. And then across social media, people are sharing tidbits of what happened in the case, but I'm still going to look for Judge Donnelly's official rulings on some of the things that the prosecution said they wanted to put out there. And if you're unfamiliar with what those things are, then I am going to drop the link to the videos where I actually read the motions and then the opposition to the motions. And speaking of the new attorney on R. Kelly's case in the Eastern District of New York, he filed a memorandum in opposition today that is sealed currently. I expect that it will be unsealed probably in the next 24 to 48 hours, but he is responding to portions of that motion, the 133 document and the 135 document. So he is going to be adding on to the defense's opposition to what took place. And so there was some other foolishness that took place. I guess there was a question that was asked of the defense regarding the Aaliyah charges, and Thomas Farinella, I guess he got a little tight-tongued and answered a question incorrectly. And then Elizabeth Geddes with the prosecution reiterated, what the judge was asking or what she was saying, and then he backtracked and realized that he had made a mistake. There are a couple of blog sites that tried to run with that, but for the most part, the major news outlets are not picking up that story and not continuing with that. The big story for the major news outlets is that R. Kelly's attorney, Devereaux Cannick, asked the judge if somebody could come in, if a tailor could come into the Brooklyn MDC to measure Mr. Kelly so that he can have suits prepared, ready for when he goes to trial, that he can come in, with the shirt and tie and a suit on. I'm not sure if the judge ruled on it yet. One article said that she kind of jokingly, said, well, this is going to be a long trial and I'm not going to be the one to go in and measure him or something to that effect, but not sure that she ever said yes or no to that. So, in one article that I read, it talked about R. Kelly's demeanor, and they said that there were times that he was kind of fidgety, rocking back and forth, and that at one point he actually fell asleep and may have been snoring. Like, not sure if that is true or just one of these websites, trying to sensationalize what is going on. But definitely I get the sense that emotionally he's probably not doing well. He's probably very overwhelmed by how the government is coming at him, how they are allowed to file these motions for the sole purpose of leaking information and trying to, shape how the jurors are going to perceive this case. So I can, believe that he is down and maybe he wasn't feeling well, or just trying to block out the noise of what is being said about him and the things that are coming out. But that was from one of the publications that, he just didn't seem all the way there, all the way engaged in the proceeding. Here I am going to read an article from the Associated Press. It says R&B singer R. Kelly gained weight and lost money while he awaits his trafficking trial that starts in earnest next week. His lawyers said Tuesday at a court hearing. And when they say next week, we know the official trial or opening statements don't begin until August 18th. But next week, jury selection begins. And I don't think I shared this with you guys, but Judge Donnelly gave a deadline for the prosecution and the defense to file documents on which jurors. So they've gotten the questionnaires back, I'm assuming. And so they're going to go through those questionnaires and they're going to determine which juries they want to keep and which potential juries they do not want on the case. And then I guess once they start jury selection on Monday, they'll just have like a set number of people that will actually show up, opposed to everybody who received the questionnaire. And so it says the revelations came as U.S. District Judge Ann M. Donnelly in New York made a series of rulings to narrow down what evidence can be shown to jurors. She mostly ruled for prosecutors, but said some evidence will be excluded because it is too similar to other parts of the case aimed at showing Kelly engaged in racketeering in pursuit of women he could abuse. So the Grammy-winning, platinum-selling R&B singer is accused of leading an enterprise of managers, bodyguards, and other employees who helped him recruit women. And sometimes at concerts and other venues, he has pleaded not guilty to racketeering, bribery, coercion, enticement, and sex trafficking. And so Deborah Cannick, one of his lawyers, told the judge that Kelly, born Robert Sylvester Kelly, needs to be measured for new clothing because he's gained so much weight in jail. And he asked that court transcripts be provided at no cost because Kelly has been unable to work for 2 years. And so we know that musicians make the bulk of their money from touring. And so we know he has not toured since the latter part of 2018. And then his royalties from his music is tied up. I told you guys about a year ago where 2 judges in the Cook County Circuit Court Civil Division had ruled that both Midwest Commercial Funding, I think is the name of it, who owned the building where his studio was, they gave them a judgment of $4 million, even though the original case that they filed against R. Kelly with the eviction was only for like several $100,000. So I don't know how they got from that to $4 million, but they were awarded that judgment. And then Heather Williams, who is an accuser in the Cook County case, she was also awarded $4 million, even though her case started out as $50,000. And they ruled that Sony had to turn over the royalties that they were currently holding for R. Kelly in order to pay off these judgments, and that all of his future royalties would go towards the Midwest judgment. And then once that $4 million was satisfied, then they would start paying the Heather Williams lady. But there is a law firm out of Chicago that picked up the case. Not sure who hired them, who's paying them. But as of last month, they were still on the case. And they are basically seeking to have those judgments vacated. And that case continues to journey along against both Midwest and Heather Williams. So I'm not sure if any of the $1.5 million, which is probably much more since that was months ago, if any of that money has actually been paid to any one of these people, or if Sony is still holding on to it. And at one point, Sony even had attorneys that were involved with trying to stop this. So he doesn't have any money. So they're asking the court, to provide transcripts for free. And, those transcripts are expensive. Like, they run into the hundreds of dollars. And when you start talking about a lot of transcripts, from each one of the court hearings, as the trial is going on, that can turn into a very hefty amount. And so he asked he told them that his funds were depleted, and said that his client, said of his client who left the courtroom after the hearing with his hands cuffed, it's going to be a long trial, Donnelly said after prosecutors outlined their plans to call numerous witnesses, including women who say they were abused physically and sexually and coerced to do things for Kelly's pleasure. The judge said the witnesses who allege abuse can testify with only their first name given to jurors who will sit in the galley rather than the jury box because of a reconfigured courtroom tied to coronavirus restrictions. Now, when she talks about witnesses only giving their first name, I'm not sure if she's referring to the motion that was filed about the anonymous, where they wanted the Jane Does 1 through 6 to be anonymous. Well, not all of them. I think it was Ariel number 2 and number 3 wanted to remain anonymous. So I don't know if her ruling on that only pertains to those 3 people, or if she's talking about any witness that comes up, because I don't even remember. I think the prosecution may have came back and said something about the other witnesses that might have been in their motion that they're filed. So not really clear based on this news article who she's referring to only having to use their first names. So Donnelly also said she would generally not allow questions aimed at revealing if any of the women have had mental health treatment. She said she would not allow the jurors to be told that one witness had worked as an exotic dancer years after she said she was abused. And so with the first part of this, she's saying that she generally does not allow that, but I'm thinking if somehow it gets into the testimony, then it will be allowed, but the defense can't bring it up. But if the prosecution brings it up, then it opens the door for the defense to bring it up. And then the exotic dancer thing she ruled against. They say that also likely to be excluded from the trial is any testimony about religious beliefs or that some of the women were directed to have sex with one another. And so that is a good thing, because, that's one of the things that, they were talking about, that they had to do these menage a trois and carrying on. So that will not be allowed. And then about, I believe it was Demetrius Smith, and talking about his religious, and R. Kelly meeting him in the bathroom or something, talking about demons and carrying on. So that won't be allowed. Prospective jurors have already filled out questionnaires aimed at ensuring they have no biases that would affect their judgment, and they will begin answering questions on next Monday. And then it goes on to talk about, his history. And then as Cannick was leaving the courtroom, he was asked if the closing of courtrooms might be grounds for appeal if his client is convicted. And Cannick smiled and said that if there was a conviction, we'd use every error that was made as an appeal, alluding to the fact that they are, putting all this stuff into play about not having people, in the courtroom and that type of thing. He would definitely be willing to file an appeal for that. And so then in another article, it states that prosecutors will also be allowed to present evidence that the Grammy Award winner had sexual contact with singer Aaliyah when she was as young as 13, before the pair married allegedly married in 1994. When she was 15, the judge ruled on Tuesday. And then other rulings, which I guess is a good thumbs up, is that the bribery allegations that they brought up about Daryl Johnson, those will not be allowed. They're not going to be allowed to introduce that. Then I'm wondering if the Northern District of Illinois will probably try to bring it up. It'll be interesting to see, or if they're just going to let it go. And then they also denied allegations that Ariel made about downloading the porn that wasn't, that was really adults in the porn. They won't be able to bring up that information in the case either. And then there was a part in the motion in limine where Ariel supposedly had one of R. Kelly's phones. They won't be able to enter that information, because as we said, Ariel could have been doing anything with that phone. So that supposedly is not going to be allowed. And then remember the gossiping employee number 1 and employee number 2, those text messages may not be allowed in. And then information about his first trial back in 2008 may also be denied. And then she didn't really say if all of the, 13 Jane Does and 2 John Does, if all of them would be allowed to come in, or if at some point she is going to limit the number of them. But whichever ones that are allowed to testify or the prosecution decides to bring in, they need to have evidence supporting that, they can't go by hearsay, he said this, she said that. And I think that that's going to be a lot of the Aaliyah case, because remember we talked about that, it's all hearsay, what Demetrius said and what Javante said, like what is the proof? And so hopefully the prosecution don't have no proof, and so they won't be able to bring in a lot of that stuff. And so basically, let's see, Ariel with the porn sites, the phone. Oh, and then the parents. So they can, I think it's going to be tricky with the parents, because I think that they can only subpoena or bring in the parents if once again the prosecution introduces something about the parents, or one of the witnesses says something about the parents. Then they can subpoena the parents and cross-examine them about whatever information was brought up in the case. But I don't think that they can just subpoena the parents to bring them in. There has to be an opening to get the parents into the case. And so once again, she should file a formal motion outlining all of this, what's going to be allowed, what's not going to be allowed, and giving more detailed information about, her rulings and what rules will apply. And so we will wait to see what those documents said. But it'll be real interesting when it all comes down. So I don't see this day as a total loss for R. Kelly. I think there was some positives that came out of this, basically the whole Daryl Johnson mockery, the stuff with Ariel Clary, trying to set him up with the porn and all of that. So I think that that is good. And then, we'll expect to see more stuff come out probably as the week progresses. And I will bring to you this motion that the new attorney filed today as soon as it is unsealed. And I'm pretty sure that it will be unsealed, but it is opposition to the motion in limine to admit certain evidence and preclude other evidence. So if it is unsealed, it's probably going to be heavily redacted if he is including stuff that, we aren't supposed to see at this moment. And his name is Calvin Scholar. So guys, that's it for me. I had a really long day. It was raining here all day long. And so I'll probably have a cold when I wake up in the morning, because I was actually out in the rain today. So I am going to go and take a hot shower and get ready for bed and finish watching these tennis matches that are on at the City Open in Washington, D.C. So go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.